So why was this monk naked, wandering around the forest? Well, these three chemicals that I talked about, atropine, hyoscine, hyoscyamine, they all induce different symptoms, but a lot the same, hallucinations, etc. And they play bugger with your body temperature. Your body temperature starts going up, and your body temperature regulation, that is keeping your body temperature within a very, very strict range, goes completely out of whack. So you start feeling really, really hot. And because you're somewhat deluded because of the workings on your state of mind by these chemicals, you just think, okay, I feel really hot. So you start stripping off all your clothes and you dive into the nearest water quite often. If people find a pool or a pond or a river to dive in, they often will. You can get these effects of poisoning from quite a lot of different plants. From the various datura species, for example. If you eat the leaves of certain datura plants, then you'll get these symptoms, and there have been cases of poisoning where people have put the leaves of different datura plants in somebody else's salad. For example, one case where the bloke who was affected went outside after eating, stripped off, completely naked, dived into the nearest pond, and then when he was carted off by ambulance, he was behaving quite naughty. He complained about being poked by little blue devils with pitchforks, which is not the kind of hallucination you really want to have. I mean, nobody really wants to be poked with pitchforks by a whole lot of little blue devils. It's one of the more interesting neurological manifestations. Delusions can take many different forms, but the pain and the fear experienced are quite strong. Atropine hallucinogenic trips are not recommendable. They're very dire. They're very much a downer, so don't bother trying to experiment with atropine as an hallucinogen. It will really not make you feel good about the resulting trip. It's a very bad trip. And of course, you run a great big risk of killing yourself in quite a nasty way, because these things do have bad effects on you. Going back to the scopolamine drug, so-called truth serum or truth drug. This is a chemical that makes you, again, somewhat relaxed, somewhat woozy in the head, and you start blatherskiting, you don't really care. So various police people thought this would make a good chemical to interrogate people with, and in fact the Czechoslovakian secret police under the communist regime did use it a fair few times to try interrogating people with, and there have been a couple of cases in the USA back in history where they've tried using it. But the problem is that it doesn't make you tell the truth, it just makes you suggestible. People can give you suggestions, and it makes you much less guarded. Now, if you're the kind of person who knows how to lie like a dog, you will probably be able to lie like a dog under scopolamine too, even despite the effects of scopolamine. It is not a truth drug. It is simply a drug which makes you feel very relaxed and very woozy in the head. Then, if you take scopolamine and try using it on somebody to interrogate them with, the big danger that you run into is that they will agree to anything you suggested to them. So if you suggest that they committed a particular crime, quite often a person might actually agree that they ended up committing that crime and 100 million other different crimes, whatever you suggest for them. If they're not terribly strong-minded, if they're not used to being very, very precise and very accurate, if they're not used to telling the truth at all times in a very painful way, then they could run into big problems, because they will end up quite often saying whatever you want them to say, which is a very bad idea if you're trying to get at the actual truth. So, back to the atropine of the berries. The berries won't make anybody tell the truth. They'll give you 3 different chemicals or whatever, but mainly atropine, and it is not much fun for you, but it would explain why somebody who's a monk who was silly enough to eat deadly nightshade berries suddenly went off his head and stripped off and wandered around completely deluded and lost and mentally confused in the woods for a fair while. So, an interesting story, and many thanks, and please see my blog post on this, full details below. Thanks again for listening. Bye.